I want to talk about that notion of fire, everything is burning in Buddhism, which relates to that famous quote in the Samyutta Nikaya, which says, "The entire world is in flames, the entire world is going up in smoke, the entire world is burning, the entire world is vibrating. But that which does not vibrate or burn, which is experienced by the noble ones, where death has no entry, in that my mind delights." And that relates also to another famous discourse of the Buddha, which is called the Adita Pariyaya Sutta, the fire sermon, where again the Buddha explains actually what means that all is burning. What is the all that is burning? And it's every part basically of the body and mind, also referring to the 5 khandhas, the 5 steps of the chain reaction of contact with object at the sense door, and then the sensation, the perception, the reaction, exactly as a chain reaction. And everybody can also conceive that notion of a chain reaction as heat burning. And everything only comes back to the simple basic notion that any phenomena, again, is all about energy and energy exchange. And as I have meant sometimes, as a human being, as an alive organic being, you are just a thermodynamic machine, which means that what you call being alive and your aliveness only happens and exists because of constant biochemical reactions releasing energy. And also in Buddhism, we bring it back to a more simple notion as far as matter and existence, that everything is made up of the 4 basic elements, which is earth, water, air, and fire. Although also one must understand, to grasp the existence and the evolution, that what matters also are the qualities that those elements represent. But that is to say that also the notion of temperature, the quality of temperature variation and heat, is always involved in every process of how the elements interact with each other, as a consequence or as a factor in the reaction, in the interaction. And as such, as I meant, as a human being and as every phenomena, there is that basic notion of something happens, rise and disappear in a way of a combustion reaction, and that releases energy, as everything in the universe is made up of energy. And as I meant before, energies are waves, and it's all about, again, the duality between 2 polarities. And it's like a binary coding of anything, any phenomena, but binary as, again, 2 polarities. And how things exist and matter usually, it comes down again to this kind of ionic connections in the molecules. What binds atoms together and molecules is still that interaction between the polarities, plus and minus. And usually when you have biochemical reactions creating or destroying molecules, then there is a release of energy, which is fire. And again, our body, human body, supposedly has a standard correct optimum temperature of operation, which is considered at like 37 degrees Celsius. And also we say that if the body is not at that temperature, then there is an issue that can be lethal. But to go back to the notion is exactly that simple fact that anything that happens, as we say, as matter is impermanent at every scale. So there is always a constant reaction. Things rise and pass away, rise and pass away. Just the same as a body, you have billions and billions of biochemical reactions releasing heat to keep you alive at any given moment, or through breathing and the heartbeat. And at the end also you were just born, that body was born, and then you consume your life away until that body dies. So all of this again is that notion of burning, and it's at every scale, because everything is energy made of waves, and all those waves interacting with each other always has the notion of burning, releasing energy, or energy transfer, which is why you are just a thermodynamic machine. And the same happens in the mind with thought and emotion, which is why, as both interact with each other, mind and matter, the classic example that many people can relate to is when you become really angry, which is an emotion, as the uncontrolled chain reaction of the 5 khandhas, as I mentioned before, the 5 steps in contact, emotion, reaction. Then usually you can feel heat inside of you as you get very angry, which also can be seen many times when the person gets so upset or angry, releasing so much heat that the face turns red. There it is. But of course it doesn't relate only to anger and such a situation. In the fire sermon, it is more described like everything is like that, because everything that happens, which is in constant evolution, and as such constant change, anicca, as we could say, then there's a non-stop chain reaction as any contact, anything happening, because energy is unstable as such, even though maybe some science will try to talk about stable energy, but nothing can be stable like that at different scale. So at the end, there is always the release of energy, heat, involved in any process of any phenomena that exists, because of the interaction, constant evolution, constant change between anything or any phenomena, which is any matter, which means any energy waves. And at that scale of the 5 khandhas, one can experience that too. That's why they are also somewhat independent by themselves. But again, the one triggers the next, that triggers the next. And that's exactly what reaction is. Because there is energy released in a different form, it moves to the next step, and to the next form, and the next step. And then So it's not literally that everything is on fire, yet everything is about energy interaction, any interaction, combination of energies, and usually because of polarities, there is a release of like heat, fire, flame, which is energy in itself, of course. And then the second part of that famous quote relates to what I've explained also in enlightenment, and that is what it relates to. If you can reach a point first of awareness of all that, at that level of concentration, when you can feel that within yourself, like for example, you can reach some level of concentration where also as a releasing of heat to help some growth, you can feel the growth of your nails or the growth of your hair. Then things keep evolving like that. But you can reach that level of concentration and deeper and transcend that awareness, as it is explained in that Fire Sermon Sutta. Then you can detach from all that, because you have understood that, again, you're not in charge of yourself, you're not in charge of your body, of course, because you're not in charge of all the biochemical reactions that happen, because they are all conditioned by themselves and with the environment and what kind of input you have in your body or your mind. But then you can see it again properly as a scientist, with detachment and only observing that and not being attached to that anymore mentally, as this is not me, this is not the self, this is not no I, it's just phenomena happening, energy interacting all the time and evolving. Then you can actually have that proper insight, as we mentioned in Vipassana, the proper insight that gives that wisdom of no me, no I, no self, and get really that detachment from all those reactions, physical reactions, biochemical reaction, or emotion and thoughts happening in the mind. And if you can detach, that's exactly what the Buddha, in this translation, they use the word estrangement. When he finds estrangement, passion fades out, and with the fading of passion, he is liberated, and that is enlightenment. And that is what it relates to when it says, which does not vibrate or burn anymore, you can say, which is experienced by the noble ones. Exactly, the noble ones mean the Arya level, means the people who have experienced enlightenment at least once at the stream enterer level. Then it says also where death has no entry. Exactly, because you have transcended life, existence, you have transcended the basic means and source of existence and phenomena, and what keeps going and going through cycles of birth and development of matter and death. And that is enlightenment. And that's why we call it the deathless, because there is no cycle anymore. You have managed to erase all that fire, all that burning, all that energy that is the source of any phenomena into existence. And compared to what's happening in the world right now, that relates the same way. Because again, most humans are unaware of that and have, of course, then no control of that, rather as typical like Pavlovian dogs, animals, they are more subject and controlled by those mind defilement. Then the burning takes over in every way. And that's why only a few humans make the proper steps to take over and control that. But the greatest majority of humans let it take over, and then it keeps increasing in that way because it's a chain reaction. It increases within one person, individual, and thus it increases in the society as a collective karma. More and more karma, burning karma is happening in the world, and that's why you have it literally as more and more fires around and more violence and more war. All that is of course burning energy, is heat up, because the individuals as human in general keep increasing the passion and the hatred as the two main type of defilement in the mind, linked both and originated from delusion, ignorance. As long as you don't have control of your mind that way, then it goes on in that direction and keeps increasing, and then it becomes more and more general and global. That's why the situation is such in the world now, and it keeps increasing that way. And more wars and more violence around at the individual level and at the global scale. And that's why it goes back to a famous quote that says the mind is a very dangerous master, but a very beautiful servant. Unfortunately, very few people manage to take over the mind, their defilement, to make it a very nice servant and use it proper way, only in the good direction with the right energy flow. And rather, the majority of humans are still controlled by the mind defilement, emotions, reactions, as everything starts in the mind for intentions, then follows the speech and the actions that goes together. That's why there's a lot of hatred speech now from politicians and from the countries, more and more countries that are at war, and more of the big countries are threatening others. So it all goes in that direction, and it's again, it's a chain reaction. So just like a good nuclear bomb, which we might see the use of soon enough, but it's very hard to stop that, especially when you have reached that point. So, but again, it's part of the cycle, and it's the big scale cycle, as I meant. Each human civilization around keeps self-destroying at some point, and then that will leave space for a new world, in the sense as everything comes and goes, everything burns itself away over time as a thing. But you can, again, as an individual, save yourself. As a human, you are very lucky to have the capacity to transcend all that and just extinguish the fire within yourself. Both sides, the fire of passion and lust, and the fire of hatred and resentment, aversion. And that's what also will affect what we call the moha, the delusional part, ignorant part, and transform it into wisdom and becoming an intelligent human being in that sense. And you can reach the point of transcending all that and being done with all that burning, and then it becomes a very peaceful mind, and you can reach that state where nothing vibrates anymore. No more vibration, no more burning, no more heat. Everything is cooled and flat like a very quiet pond where the mud has all settled at the bottom. And I will add also, on the other hand, relating to the last quote in my book of quotes, that's why the proper Buddhist notion in Theravadic tradition, original tradition, is to reach enlightenment, which is to transcend that, to put an end to what we consider that ignorant, delusional, meaningless cycle of birth and death and birth and death and existence after each other. Just the same as to put an end of experiencing over and over, suffering each existence over, and just like what's happening in the world now. So in that sense, because I see that the fire sermon also is one that he gave to 1,000 monks who were actually worshipping the sun, so in one way, and there is awareness there too, that the sun helps for life, right? It's not exactly the source of life, but it is one of the sources of life. Thanks to the sun, we have that life on earth. But again, what is life? Ultimately, this is exactly that constant burning of energy, and that's what the sun is. As I meant, even if people want to worship the sun in that sense, it's quite ignorant, because we are worshipping that ball of fire which releases energy to provide energy in a different form to live beings, organic forms on earth. But that ball of energy, like any other energy form and fire, it burns itself away at a different scale of time. That's the point. But this is just a big ball of fire. Started smaller, will increase, and it will burn itself away, just like a human being does during its own life. You were born, your tiny little thing form started with more and more energy developing that being into that kind of body that keeps changing all the time, thanks to burning of energy, sustaining the heat factor in the body, but still burning yourself away until there's a point where you have consumed all of that makes you in that sense, that constantly changing you, supposedly, until you die. But at the end, it's just going through that cycle after cycle after cycle, which we call samsara. But at the end of it, there's no meaning to that. It's very meaningless. You just keep going through existences. So what? For what purpose? Just burning yourself away each time around with more or less suffering as burning heat also within, with the mind defilements. And then you take the chance to be also reincarnated in lower forms of existence, which also take you a longer time, longer period through those cycles of even more suffering. But the point, at least for Buddhists that way, is to transcend all that, to be done with all that, to reach enlightenment and no more existence, no more vibration, no more constantly burning yourself through existence after existence after existence, because that's all there is. And that's why, and life is not so more sacred than that. There's nothing holy about it. It's just existence after existence. And if you are going through it as a live being, organic form, especially a sentient being with this extra brain, mind capacity and sentience, then you add actually more burning and more suffering to those existences as far as emotions goes and emotional roller coaster. But the point is to transcend all that. I mean, again, many people, when it's too much for them, they will rather justify that and say, wow, that's what makes life exciting, that's what makes life worth living, and I enjoy that, the ups and downs and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's a good denial point for classic ignorance, but exactly that level of people trying to justify that madness, but it is seen as madness, of course. And that's why it's part of moha, human madness, to just go through existence after existence, through suffering and the burning away of each existence endlessly. For what? So this is the deeper wisdom in Buddhism and the understanding of why one wants to reach full enlightenment, to put an end to that nonsense madness of infinite cycle of birth and death and rebirth and death and existence for what? At the end, nothing. Only going through some suffering or some burnings and roller coasters each time around, but there's no more meaning to that at the end. But rather being enlightened, give something else to it. As I said in my quote, the last quote of my book, then it's more like you reach the state of a black hole versus any sun, any star in any galaxy and system that is all bound to the same faith of rising as a star, getting bigger, burning more and more energy, and then explode and decay and disappear and then start over again. But the black hole is that ultimate peace, harmony, no more burning, no more vibration. And that's why the quote says, in that my mind delights.